You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Rafe Bartholomew. Welcome to the Global Bounce. Assistance needed on an article about Pinoy basketball. That's the subject line on probably my favorite and definitely the most unexpected email I've ever received. It landed in my inbox on July 11, 2014, sent from Belgrade, Serbia. And after reading it, I felt more connected to a global basketball community than ever before.
First of all, sorry for the awkward subject, but that's the best I could muster at 3:45 a.m. in this time zone. I'm Miloš. I do a lot of writing for local media outlets as I was previously an active sports writer. Due to the nature of my work, I saw a lot of worldly hoops and I have been following the PBA since 2008 more or less. With time, I have been appraised as one of the bigger PBA savants in Serbia, where I have a reputation of a guy who watches weird basketball. When that clip of Willie Miller pulling a fast one on Ranidel went viral, I was invited for a radio appearance where I talked about PBA at great length.
Okay, pause. The highlight he's referring to happened in a 2014 game between the Ginebra Gin Kings and Talkintex Katropa of the Philippine Basketball Association. It went viral around the basketball internet because Willie Miller, a guard for Ginebra, retrieved a jump ball with an open lane to the basket and two Talkintex defenders hot on his tail to defend what looked like an easy layup opportunity. But instead of racing ahead of them to score, Willie slowed down, turned his back to the basket he was supposed to shoot on, and pretended to be in the backcourt walking the ball up the floor in the wrong direction. The nearest defender, Ranidel de Ocampo, fell for it hook, line, and sinker and started backpedaling away from Willie to protect the opposite basket. The moment Ranidel began his retreat, Willie turned around, took two dribbles, and banked a completely uncontested layup through the rim for two of the easiest points ever scored on a professional basketball court. The prank was a sensation, appearing on blooper reels and highlight compilations around the world. Got it? Cool. Now back to Miloš.
Anyhow, for a while I was stewing about writing a great sweeping piece on Pinoy basketball and its odd quirks, and just recently my old editor over at b92.net, Serbia's biggest internet portal, threw me a bone asking me if I could write a big feature in time for the World Cup. Even though the deadline is way in August, I already started gathering sources for the article. A friend of mine, ex-co-worker who now lives in the Philippines, recommended me your book. I figured I could as well contact you directly where I get my hands on a copy. Now, not to blow my own horn, but I hold a decent reputation in the writing circles here. Several of my pieces were best-read sports-related articles on the Serbian internet for a brief period after publishing, and I want to make this one really special. Having watched over 200 PBA matches over the course of the past 6 years, I developed a real liking for the league, the characters that populated, the happy-go-nutty TV commentators who code-switch between English and Tagalog on a random basis. I really do feel Serbia needs to know more about the great Filipino basketball tradition, especially as we hold the sport so close to our heart. After all, we won our second world's gold and first outside of our own country in Manila in 1978.
So Miloš and I traded emails for the next few days, gushing thousands of words back and forth at one another about our favorite PBA players, the unusual regularity with which pro teams in the Philippines build and then cough up 25-point leads over the course of single games, and some of the funniest and most impressive feats we'd seen in Philippine hoops. In one of his emails, he dropped an insight that took my breath away.
What really attracted me to PBA in a big way is that their basketball history, the folklore, the myths, the heroes and the villains, developed pretty much independently from the rest of the world, or so I feel. Reading Wikipedia articles about Samboy Lim, Alan Kadick, Sonny Jaworski, Alvin Patrimonio, etc., I was amazed how they were written out in a way that you would feel that the only basketball that ever mattered was played in Araneta Coliseum and Cuneta Astrodome. Sure, there's the odd American here and there, but Philippine basketball is fiercely domestic and proud of it. Serbia gave birth to many basketball legends, but we always looked up to the stars, the NBA, and we would baptize our heroes only after enough battles versus international opposition. But in the Philippines, you're a legend if you win a few conferences in style. It was like reading Lord of the Rings, a whole different galaxy, a whole micro-world of its own with its own rules, heroes, and battlegrounds.
I can still hardly believe it. Miloš had somehow developed an appreciation and understanding for Philippine basketball almost as deep as my own, and he'd never even set foot in the country. It took me living in Manila for years, immersing myself in the past and present of the Philippine game, to arrive at the level of insight he'd gained by streaming PBA doubleheaders from Belgrade. It was like the universe had delivered my Serbian basketball doppelganger to my inbox, the version of me I might have become if I were born in Belgrade in 1982 instead of New York City. We stayed in touch after that, trading delirious DMs later that summer when the Philippine national team forced overtime against Croatia in the team's first game of the 2014 FIBA World Cup. And eventually we met in 2017, when Miloš flew to California to shoot interviews for a short documentary about the Sacramento Kings' Serbian ties for Vice Serbia. He called it The Sacramento Serbs. When Miloš and his film crew visited my place in LA, they even met my fiance's enormous 200-pound Great Dane, Jack, and immediately compared him to Serbia's gargantuan 7'4" basketball star Boban Marjanović. Months later, after they had flown home to Belgrade, Miloš would sign off our WhatsApp chats with, "Regards to dog." Over the years, Miloš would encourage me over and over again to visit Belgrade, to witness the Serbian passion for basketball, and maybe even write about it, like I had done with the Philippines in Pacific Rims. Man, I wish I had gotten a chance to go, but life and work in the States always got in the way. So, I still haven't made it to Serbia, but in this episode, I'm hoping to do the next best thing. A deep dive into Serbian hoops alongside my Balkan doppelganger. This is episode 2 of The Global Bounce, a Puma podcast production. I'm your host, Rafe Bartholomew.
Hi, I'm Miloš Jovanović. I'm from Belgrade, Serbia. I'm 43 years old, born here in 1980, and I've been a basketball journalist and a podcaster, currently running a Šesta Lična, or the Sixth Personal podcast, on the Mondo portal for Serbian news networks, and I've been doing this for the past 20 or so years, following basketball across the globe.
Right from the beginning, I started noticing little echoes between basketball history in Serbia and the Philippines. The sport arrived in Manila in the early 1900s through the YMCA and other American colonial institutions. By 1911, basketball was part of the official phys ed curriculum the American government created for Philippine public schools. And Serbia wasn't too far behind in adopting the game.
Actually, it's funny that you asked that now, because right now in 2023, we're going through a celebration of 100 years of basketball in Serbia. It's a Serbian basketball centenary. The sport happened 100 years ago, but didn't really take root until the World War II ended. In 1945, we saw something which could resemble first glimpses of organized basketball, first clubs forming up. As you know, the flagship clubs of Serbian sport are Red Star and Partizan Belgrade, and they are formed in, oldie socialist style. They're called sporting societies. And in this kind of mold, you have like one big umbrella organization, which is called Red Star Partizan. And then within it, you have the football club, or the soccer club, as you want to call it, the basketball club, the handball club. And it goes all the way down to track and field, table tennis, chess, and whatnot. So essentially speaking, the basketball clubs sprang up after the war immediately. And the first games were organized outdoors. We didn't really become a superpower until the 60s, when the first solid generation of players started propping up. And we won the World Cup in 1970, which we were trusted with organizing. And it's been, up and away since then. Most of the people who are familiar with the sport of basketball remember the great Yugoslav teams of the late 70s and the late 80s. A pretty number of Hall of Famers played for those sides. I'm talking Dino Radja, Toni Kukoc, Dražen Petrovic, Vlade Divac. Those teams have conquered back-to-back European championships in 89 and 91. They won the World Cup in Buenos Aires in 1990. Then the war happened. We split up in a couple of distinct countries. What was left of the old Yugoslavia became something which we call the new Yugoslavia, state union of Serbia and Montenegro, which performed further under such name for 10 more years, give or take. Then we were like Serbian Montenegro, and now we're called just Serbia.
Philippine basketball has its legends like Ambrosio Padilla, captain of the national team that finished 5th and only lost one game to the eventual gold medalists from the United States at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. There's Kaloy Loisaga, who led the Philippine team to a bronze medal at the 1954 World Cup, the best result ever for an Asian nation at the Olympics or World Cup. And of course, you've got icons of the 70s like Robert Jaworski, Bogs Adornado, Danny Florencio, and Ramon Fernandez, who brought the nation's basketball fever to its boiling point. Likewise, the Serbian game has its roster of founding fathers, starting with Professor Aleksandar Nikolić, the godfather of Serbian basketball. Although in Nikolić's time, the nation was still part of Yugoslavia.
He is credited as the person who molded something which he called the Yugoslav School of Basketball. So the important part is, up until the 80s, European basketball has developed pretty independently from American basketball. We didn't have exposure to NBA. The professor is basically credited as the first guy who innovated the national doctrine of Yugoslav basketball, which is basically hard defense, transition offense, patient attacks, patient half-court sets, and everything like that. People who met him spoke of him as a great individual who was well ahead of his time. And there is always an anecdote which I like to speak of. And the professor was a consultant to a smaller Belgrade club in the mid-90s. And this club was coached by a young but a very defensive-minded coach who was very strict and very disciplinarian. And the professor was attending one of their practices, and everybody was like, okay, so what's he going to say to us? And the professor, no, just go ahead and play. So the point guard takes the ball, calls a set play, and professor stops it and says, what are you doing? He says, I'm calling a set play. Fine, go ahead, run your set play. So they run a set play, and back then it was a 30-second offense in European basketball and FIBA basketball. In 29 seconds, somebody shoots a corner three-pointer and hits it. So professor says, stop it. What's wrong? He said, you called the play. Yes. You were open 3 seconds in. Yes. Shoot the ball. He's like, why? Shoot the ball. That is the future of basketball. If you're open, you should shoot the ball. And hearing that now in 2023, where, you know, all those long drawn passing movements seem to be the thing of the past, and just if you're open, shoot it. It sounds so far ahead of his time. And it was like mid-90s when it was essentially considered bad form to shoot basketball before the 20th second of your set offense. So yeah, he was a man ahead of his time, and one of the biggest halls in Belgrade where Red Star plays home games is now called the Professor Aleksandar Nikolić Hall.
And, like the Philippines, where the national team's triumphs on the court led the country's love of the game to become intertwined with Filipino identity during the push for independence from U.S. colonial rule, Serbia's bond with the game deepened during the 1990s when the breakup of Yugoslavia into nations like Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Montenegro, and others put the Balkan region through more than a decade of war. Is basketball in Serbia sort of a part of national pride that people accept and consider, even someone who's not in the basketball world, who's not a player or a coach or but would say this is one of the things about us that makes us who we are?
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely say that, especially the people from my generation and from my age, because, we had this civil war breakout in 91, 92, and then for 4 years we were isolated from the international community, and we started playing international basketball back again. We were readmitted in 1995. And from the first attempt, we won the Eurobasket in 1995. Aleksandar Đorđević scored, I don't remember, 41 points with 9 3-pointers in the final game. We beat Lithuania, a great Lithuanian team with Sabonis the Elder and Marčiulionis, formerly of Golden State, Sacramento, and Denver, and a bunch of other great players from that team. We beat them in the finals, and winning that title, that was such a massive outpour of national pride going, because we were isolated for 4 years. There was a war going on. So many things happened. It's a different country. And then to get out and win that and observe that as a fan, watch it from the television set and hear the commentator hollering and screaming, and then the reception in front of the 200,000 people or so on the balcony of the National Assembly building in Belgrade, that was something else. And at that point in time, you felt like, man, this is us. This is what we are. And that kind of came into our DNA as a kind of a big, fat middle finger to the rest of the world, saying, you haven't broken us down. We're still here. And, we're ready to win some more. And then we won. In 1996, we played the Americans for the first time. When I say the Americans, I mean the professionals. Of course, we played the Americans plenty of times before. And we held out in Atlanta for 24 minutes. There was 51-51, and then, of course, Americans broke away. But, even those 25 minutes were something like, in the back of your mind, we can't be the team with Shaquille O'Neal, David Robinson, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Charles Barkley, Reggie Miller, and all those 90s NBA greats. But you're like, we need to give him hell for as long as we can. We lost by 20 odd points, but it felt like a victory for the first half, at least. And then we won the Eurobasket in 97. Then we won the World Cup in 98. So Americans were led by Wendell Alexis and Brad Miller, who played CBA at the time or something. And those were the good years. It was like every summer there was a big old party because the basketball players were coming home. We would all gather up in front of the National Assembly. They would all come at the balcony and greet us. Definitely, I'm going to say that all those things are now ingrained in the national DNA.
And it's not that hard to take pride in a sports tradition that has produced so many great players. From pioneering globetrotters like Vlade Divac, one of the first European players to find success in the NBA, to the Denver Nuggets two-time MVP Nikola Jokić, currently considered the best player in the world after leading Denver to an NBA championship. Not the best player in Europe, not the best outside of the United States, but the best, full stop.
Jokić carrying the ball all the way through as well. Volleying basketball in Belgrade from their superstar. Jokić through the double team. He's going to show us he can do everything. Nikola Jokić up against Giannis again. Jokić, pure passion, determination.
I was actually discussing this a couple of weeks ago with the former national team coach of Serbia, Aleksandar Đorđević, one of the greatest players in our history. It was an interview, and he asked me, but just, tell me something. Why do you think we're so good at this? And we both agreed that it's two things. First of all, as Serbians, we don't take anyone's word for it. We need to have the final say on things. So I think it's the inherent Serbianness of just trying to get one over you is what makes us good at this. And of course, there's the genetics. We are considered to be second or third tallest country in Europe, which helps, granted. But I think it's mostly the just innate sense of wanting to be better than the people around you is what brought us to the top of the basketball world, where we are, still somewhat standing on.
And that Yugoslav school of basketball that Miloš credited the professor Aleksandar Nikolić with developing, those methods still endure in Serbia, along with a broad approach to training young athletes in several different sports before they specialize, which Miloš says helps create basketball players who have mastered the fundamental shooting, passing, and ball handling skills, but who can also approach the game in creative ways for an extra advantage.
There's two things. First of all, the Serbian athletes, I don't know a single one who plays only one sport. When you're growing up as a kid in Serbia, they let you try everything. You stick with the best thing around. But all of us, as part of our primary school curriculum and high school curriculum, we would play football, primary. Then when you grow a bit taller, you play soccer. When you grow a bit taller, you start playing basketball. Some people branch out into handball. Some people branch out into volleyball. Some people do track and field. But basically, we consider football, basketball, handball, volleyball the holy quadruple of Serbian team sports. And we all played that growing up. So it's funny. I heard a lot of stories from great Serbian players and great Yugoslav players who said, I was really great at this, but I chose this when I was 18. I think a lot of Serbian players actually draw inspiration from other sports as well, and steal a bit of this, steal a bit of that. And to Americans who usually have a different variety of team sports, which are not really, they don't really mesh with basketball. I mean, you cannot say you'll learn something about basketball about playing baseball, and you cannot really say you'll learn something about basketball about playing American football, but certain patterns of running and strategies and everything like that. You can steal a bit from handball, for example, the body checking, the physicality and everything like that, and a bit of running patterns. And so you can steal a lot from volleyball, and you can steal a lot of football as well. And I think just basically the outlook of Serbian kids of playing all those sports at the same time and then choosing eventually to pick one is something which gives them a broader perspective and a bit of what you said is a great talent of great Serbian players such as Vlade Divac, such as Nikola Jokić, is thinking outside of the box. And the second part is when you start playing basketball as a kid in Serbia, they don't profile you by height. If you're tall, that's cool, but you will learn the same things as the short kids do. So they will tell you'll play center at some point in time. But the coaches will make sure you know the fundamentals first and foremost. So we don't know if there's a growth spurt waiting for you, and somewhere down the road, and we don't know if you're going to stick being 5'9". But we're going to make sure that you learn all the good things which you need to learn. They teach you how to dribble. They teach you how to drive. They are very, very strict on a couple of things like if you're driving from the left-hand side, you should lay it in with your left. If you're laying it in with your right, you need to make left your jumping foot and so on. In the end, when you're a professional and when you're Nikola Jokić, who is 7 foot and rebounding and doing all the things center do, I don't think the coaches are very insistent on you repeating those fundamentals, but it sticks with you as you're a kid, and it's something you learn to do. And it's a neat little extra which you can bring in. Most of the great Serbian players, past and current, have something a little bit of extra to their game. Like if you look at Bogdan Bogdanović, who is now with the Atlanta Hawks, he's primarily a jump shooter, right? But and that's going to earn his NBA salaries by shooting 40% from the 3-point arc. But if you give him the basketball in his hands, say you need to create something, they got a Clemson, Trae Young, he's going to do it because he knows how to do it. And he ran plays before, and he can run pick and rolls as a primary creator, and he can do things off the screens and everything like that. So most of those great guys are going to give you something extra. Like Nikola Jokić is going to rebound, he's going to score, but the passes are something extra. You're not really expecting that from a center position. Vlade Divac was the same, and so on and so on. So and of course, there's also this thing. There's 400 million Americans, right? So, I mean, you can pretty much profile yourself down to that this guy's going to do this thing great, and that guy's going to do that thing great. There's only 7 or 8 million of Serbians right now. So if we're going to, survive in this big, mean professional basketball world, we need to be pretty elite so somebody can give us a job.
But it's not just the Serbian players who go on to NBA careers who capture the nation's attention. The country's hoops history is littered with names of all-time greats who became immortals thanks to their play in European championships and the heated rivalry between Belgrade's 2 professional club powers, Partizan and Red Star, whose derby games can seem on the verge of breaking out into a full-scale riot.
Bodiroga between his legs. Has he got some skills or what? Bodiroga drives in. Is there anything this man cannot do?
Just listen to Miloš talk about Dejan Bodiroga, perhaps the best European player who never made the leap to the NBA.
He was a player I trust my life with. Let me just put it that way. If you needed somebody to hold the fort, withstand the storm, play a good defense, get a rebound, or drive in for 2 points, that was Dejan Bodiroga. You just pass the ball to him and you forget all your life's worries. I never felt safer in my life than watching Dejan Bodiroga spearhead the Serbian offense, regardless of if we're up by 5 or down by 25. When the ball found its way to his hands, I felt safe. He was very, very unique. He would dominate you by being slow. That's a funny thing, because the modern game of basketball is all about quickness and explosiveness, right? And he would amaze you by just being a touch slower. Many good players have this burst of speed, right? And Bodiroga would have like a burst of slowness. He would make a quick first step, and then he would pull the brakes, basically. So all the players would just flow back, and he would pull the brakes on his second step, lean onto his right foot, and jump shoot, a quick bank shot for 2 points. And that was his trademark move. He was like a 6'8" point guard. They used to call him the White Magic. I suppose that's not politically correct to say these days, but that was considered a compliment. And he was just great to watch. From the marketing point of view, from a commercial point of view, it was very boring. He was not a jump shooter. He had this awkward-looking set shot from the free throw, but he was a master of handles and fundamentals. He was a great rebounder, a great passer, great court vision, and basically he was the guy who would you trust, pardon my French, getting shit done when the going got tough.
I hear Miloš waxing poetic like that, and I can't help think of Philippine basketball legends who are never going to be household names in Middle America, but who made millions of Filipino fans feel those same kind of emotions during their careers. Safe, like when Alvin Patrimonio catches the ball at the high post, or Jojo Lastimosa is pulling up for an elbow jumper in the fourth quarter, or James Yap is floating through the lane with the ball in one hand, or L.A. Tenorio is pushing the ball up the floor in transition. Which brings me to the one question I've always been a little bit afraid to ask Miloš straight up. Knowing what we know about the history and tradition of Serbian basketball, he and other Serbian fans would be well within their rights to consider themselves the most hoops-crazy nation on earth. Lithuania also has a claim to that title. So what does he think? When it comes to the love of the game, does the Philippines rank alongside Serbia and other great basketball nations?
For sure, we feel like basketball royalty. That is a fact. If you're asking a Serbian person such as myself, who do you acknowledge above you? We're going to say the US on a good day. But the US, for the most part, we will acknowledge the US. Everybody else, we're going to look down on. That's just the facts of life. It's like asking Brazilians, who do you consider is the best football nation in the world? They'll say, us, of course. Nobody else. They might win, but they're not us, you know? That's kind of the attitude. But the funny part is that you say, basically, the essence of this question can be phrased something like, who do you think is more hoops crazy, Serbians or the Filipinos? I'm going to have to say the Filipinos, because there isn't that many great success in Philippine sports other than basketball, is there? I mean, in Serbia, football is still the sport, and we have enjoyed great successes in basketball. But football is still what brings people most out and what brings the most passion out. We won medals in handball. We're a volleyball superpower. We're a water polo superpower. We have Novak Djokovic. We have some track and field athletes and whatnot. And throughout our history, basketball was one of these sports. Let's just put it that way. In Philippines, I always have the impression that basketball is the sport, as if nothing else really matters. And with that in regard, I consider the Filipinos to be a very unique bunch in the way how they perceive basketball. I'm going to say they're definitely a big-time basketball country. It's a universe unto its own. And this is what I really appreciate about Philippine sports fandom, which really fascinates me in a way. I started watching the PBA broadcasts, and they had Philippine announcers, which were speaking in a crazy bilingual mix of English and Tagalog or whatever. And it was basically like every seventh word was Filipino word, which I wasn't familiar with. And even the English which they used wasn't something English which I was familiar with, because, you know, I'm used to American announcers if I'm listening to basketball. And those people, the Philippine television, they spoke in a very different and peculiar kind of basketball language, which I wasn't sure of. To this day, I don't know why they call a basketball player a cager in the Philippines, but apparently that's how it works. Bit by bit, I started getting drawn into this strange world of Philippine basketball, because in every European country there is something which you like to call levels. You know, there's the national championship, right? There's the EuroLeague, which is like intra-European competition, and then there's the NBA on top of it all, right? It's like a finely structured hierarchy where you are supposed to know your place. You stay in your lane. Let's just put it that way. If you're really good, you go here, and then if you're really good at that level, you go there, and then you might end in the NBA, and you know, you a different kind. And in the Philippines, it was all about the Philippines, and I found that great, because here's a basketball product which looks and acts as it evolved completely independently from the worldly basketball trends in the past 50 years, and it's so insular, and there's so many people in it and following it. And they're so dedicated and they're so passionate, and it's like a fairy tale in a way. If you really dig deeper into it, and you listen to the commentary, you don't just follow the game itself. It's a world into its own. And when they speak of legends, they don't speak of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. They speak of, you know, Jaworski or Patrimonio and some other big players. It's like basketball outside the Philippines does not exist, which I found very funny. I'm sure that's a very outsider's perspective of things, but that's how it looked to me. Because all the kids which you watch playing all the young players who are playing in Europe are dreaming to go to NBA, and there's a kid in Boracay Island who's dreaming to play for Ginebra. So I mean, to me it was very cool, and I started watching Philippine basketball not anymore as a sport, but as a kind of a TV show in a way that I was following it like to me it felt like a new episode in a series which I was following through. I started getting into the anthropological angle, the sociological angle, all kind of cultural angles, and I started picking up on all those great PBA traditions. You know what I liked most? The spray painting of the numbers in the finals. Man, that was so great. They just take a can of spray paint, and the cameraman follows the guy, and he's like, shaking that thing, crossing off the number. And I really love that. And then this is the part where it gets really weird, and you try explaining to other people how it looks like, right? And then you tell them, okay, so they play in 3 conferences, and they're like, what do you mean 3 conferences? You mean like 3 times? No. That conference doesn't mean conference in Philippine English. Conference is a part of a season. And then they're like, what the hell are you talking about? And they're like, they have one of them without the imports, and then they have, and I even call them imports, which is also inherently Philippine. In Europe, you're going to say foreigner, right? You're going to say foreign player as a foreigner, and in Philippines, they're called the imports. And this one is without imports, and this one is the middle tournament, and this one and teams change names every year, and they have age restrictions and all those silly little things, and people are just looking at me and saying, are you really trying to explain me all this crazy things?
Well, not all of Miloš's countrymen thought he was crazy when he tried to explain the unique aspects of Philippine basketball. The Serbian seafarers got it right away.
In Serbia, you're going to cross paths with Filipinos. How do you do that? If you work on a cruise ship. There's a lot of Serbian sailors who work cruise ships, right? And most of them have met the Filipino workers working on cruise ships as well. And those people would just chime in with comments and say, man, I thought we were crazy about basketball, but those Filipinos, they're crazy about basketball. Like literally, they're gonna find, they're gonna cut up an old barrel and stick it, nail it to the wall and something like that. And they're gonna play makeshift hoops over that. And they're like, I mean, we are crazy about things, but they are really crazy about things. And I'm happy to have played a part in explaining to the greater Serbian audience how Philippines are a great basketball nation.
You want to know how I know that if I had wound up moving to Belgrade in 2005 to study basketball, instead of moving to Manila, the experience would have changed my life in much the same way that my time in the Philippines did? Because any nation that's full of people who know and love the game like Miloš does is a place that I could call home. I just happened to find mine in Manila. Did Miloš and I miss your country? Well, if you're from anywhere besides Serbia or the Philippines, the answer is probably yes. So what other places in the world should we be talking about that haven't come up yet? Let us know. Again, I'm Rafe Bartholomew. The Global Bounce is a Puma Podcast production. This episode was produced by Nina Torralba and edited by Mark Castellan. Additional research by Geraldine Pascual, with creative consults from Trisha Aquino and Carl Javier. The video snippets featuring Dejan Bodiroga and Nikola Jokić are from FIBA on Facebook and FIBA, the basketball channel on YouTube. Maraming salamat po.